staying healthy and connected during this time. My name's Emily Nichols. I'm the Indiana Regional Program Manager, and I'm your facilitator for today's call. And we're so excited to have this discussion today, all on self-care. And we are so delighted to have our Bring Change to Mind founder, Glenn Close, and Kevin Love from the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Kevin Love Fund joining us for this discussion today. And we'll hear from them in just a little bit. I know everyone's really excited to dig into this conversation with them. But just a few housekeeping items as we're getting started. Please don't unmute yourself, and just in order to be respectful of others who are speaking. And we do have Bring Change to Mind staff monitoring the chat on the right-hand side. So if you need any technical assistance, you can type it in there. You can hit gallery view in the top right-hand corner if you want to see the full grid. There's about 4 or 5 pages of us right now, so you'll need to scroll to the side to see everyone. And we are recording the call, like I mentioned, for any of those that weren't able to attend today, but we'll only be doing that up into our our poll and breakout session. But before we get started, we are going to do a fun activity together to kick off our call and feel energized. And I don't know about you, but in Indiana, it's kind of rainy and it got cold again today. So we are going to do a fun little clap together. This is something you guys can do even to start your virtual meetings, okay? So to get started, we're just gonna do one big clap like this, and then we'll be like a superhero going into the air. Okay? I'm gonna take everyone off mute. There may be an echo, it's okay. The first one, we're just gonna clap. Here, I'm gonna do it twice. I'll count you down, okay? Clap. All right, super. Let's do it again. Ready? 1, 2, 3, clap. Yes, very good. So we're going to do another one. This is the Diva Clap. So you are going to clap and then go, hey. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, clap. Hey. Let's do it again. 1, 2, 3, clap. Hey, all right. Good job. See, that wasn't so bad. So now we're all feeling energized, feeling good. Like I said, that's something really great you can do to kick off your meeting. But let me talk a little bit about our agenda today and what we'll be talking about. So I'm going to start us off by leading a brief discussion on what self-care is and what it isn't. And then we're going to move into our conversation with Glenn and Kevin to get their perspective on self-care. And you'll have the opportunity to ask them some questions at that point as well. Then we'll go into like a fun polling section just to get to know each other a little bit better, and some breakout groups, so you have a more smaller, intimate section of our call today where you guys can talk about what self-care looks like for you now. Then we'll close our time together when we have an exciting new PSA we'll be giving you a little bit more information about. Does that sound good? Thumbs up from everybody? Okay. Yep. Awesome. Let's go. So like I mentioned earlier, we're talking about self-care. And I know it's a very big buzzword right now, but pretty much the whole definition of self-care is doing any type of activity deliberately, intentionally, in order to take care of your mental, emotional, and physical health. It's a lot, those big 3 areas. Now, I'm at a different stage of life than most of you, all of you pretty much. I'm a busy working mom, but finding my own version of self-care was kind of a journey for me personally. A few years ago, I found myself extremely overwhelmed, just stressed out to the max, and I just had to find a way to put myself first and without the guilt. And you know, like they say on the airplane, as the stewardess are coming around, they tell you to put your oxygen mask on first. You guys know that, yeah? We need to do that for ourselves and able to show up as the best version of ourselves for everyone else. So crafting my own self-care routine included movement, meditation, and especially connection with others. And it was just a game changer to help me feel my best. So the reason I was asked to facilitate this call today is because self-care is obviously something I'm really passionate about. I also have my own podcast called the Self-Care Isn't Selfish podcast, where I bring on guests to share all things self-care, mostly talking about how to create a routine and what being mindful really means, and just how to take care of your body and even more. And I also help coach people to help them create a simple and sustainable self-care routine, and that's what we're going to help you all do today. So even as students, you can put your oxygen mask on first in order to show up as your best self for your friends, your family, as a student. And you can do this through crafting your own personal self-care routine. So you'll have an opportunity to talk about this more in your breakout groups here in just a little bit. I want you to start thinking to yourself, though, in the meantime, a few activities that you currently do, or maybe you would like to start doing in regards to your own self-care routine. A couple of things to keep in mind. Obviously, self-care isn't selfish. It's very personal to you. It is going to change as you go through different seasons of your life. You know, it's important to write it down, actually schedule it in order to make it happen and make it a routine. You know, and there's lots of different areas of self-care you can think of, you know, including being creative, making a daily gratitude list, getting outside, cuddling with your pet, and so forth. So with this whole quarantine going on, I would say your self-care routine looks a lot different right now. Would you guys agree? You give me a thumbs up? Yeah. Yeah, so let's now turn to our special guest at this point. We're going to hear a little bit more about their perspective on self-care and what that looks like right now. Before we do that, I do want to remind you of a couple of things. We will be doing a question and answer session after Glenn and Kevin have an opportunity to have a conversation with us about self-care. So please feel free to type in the chat any questions that you have. We'll be monitoring that and taking those questions after their conversation. Or if you want to come off mute and ask that in person, you can hit the little participant button and hit raise hand. You can raise your hand and we'll call on you to come off mute and ask your question as well. If you don't see Glenn and Kevin in your screen, you can also hit that top right button again and hit it to speaker view and they'll come up bigger on there. So I'm so excited and delighted now to introduce you to our special guests. Like I said, hear a little bit more about their perspective on self-care, but let me tell you a little bit about Glenn first and let her take it from here. Like I mentioned, she's the co-founder of Bring Change to Mind. She's Annie's mom, award-winning actor, producer, and writer, a lover of nature, and I love this, an introvert with polished extrovert skills, which I love. I consider myself an introverted extrovert. So, Glenn, I'm going to go ahead and turn the conversation over to you to get started, have you introduce us to Kevin as well. So, Brenna, if you can help us get Glenn off of mute, I'll have you take it over from here.
All right. Oh, somebody took it off?
Yeah, I think Brenna took it off for you.
Oh, okay. Well, hi, everyone. I'm very, very honored to be part of this meeting. I have to say that I haven't always been great with self-care. I think when I'm working, it's easier for me to have a schedule. Because it's structured. You have to show up at a certain time, you know, then you go home, you know, you have to come down, you've got to get something to eat, you've got to go to sleep. So that's easier for me. So it's been a challenge for me to be isolated in a way. I mean, my sister Jess is just across the yard, so we're very, very lucky. And we're also in a place where there's a lot of wide open spaces, so we've been able to get out. What's very hard for me is schedule. I'm not good at keeping a daily schedule. And I can't say that I have gotten, you know, perfect at it because I usually have so much in my mind and so much that I want to do that you can get easily distracted from one thing to the other. I have certain projects that I started that really give me a lot of pleasure, and it's almost meditative. I've started doing pen and ink drawings. With these little sculpey things that I'm just making into these little art pieces. For me, it's very, very important, and I'm very lucky again to be able to go outside and to hike and to just get real good exercise. It feels. When I come back, I feel energized. It might seem strange that you get energy by exercising. I remember I was doing a play years ago, and my dad, who was a doctor, I called him up and said, "Dad, I am so tired all the time." And he said, "Well, you got to get some exercise." I said, "I don't have the energy to get exercise." But that's the first time I started going to a gym and working out, and lo and behold, it gave me 50% more exercise. So I know what that does, not only for your body, but also for your brain. The thing that really, I feel very guilty when I do something that gives me just pure pleasure, like reading a book. Or I can't, I don't know, maybe it's because I come from that Yankee culture, that New England culture, that you're always supposed to be working and doing something. But a friend out in Montana, a young man actually who lives with bipolar disorder, he told me once that if you think of your mind and your body as a glass filled with water, and you could empty yourself out, even if it's giving to others, until you're so exhausted that mind and body that you don't have energy. You can get depressed, you can get stressed out. Then you have to somehow fill yourself up again. But he said, you know what? The art is dealing with the world with the overflow. And that really meant a lot to me, which means that you have to keep your glass full all the time. And Emily was saying basically the same thing, that it's okay to do things that bring you joy. It's okay if you don't particularly want to go to a certain gathering of people. If it doesn't bring you joy, don't do it. You have to find a balance between giving back and giving to yourself, so you have the wherewithal to give back. So that's something that I think will be something I'll be working on my whole life, all the 100 years I have left. So I guess also I'm learning a lot being next door to my sister Jess, who lives with bipolar disorder. I've seen her get incredibly stressed out. If she was here, she would say that she was starting to pick again at her skin and make herself bleed. But we have worked together. She's going. First of all, you have to kind of pinpoint why you're feeling that way, and of course, I think she was triggered by all the terribly distressful things that are going on in our world. We don't feel safe. I don't know if we felt safe before coronavirus. So you could say that all these things now are coming into us. And also we're at a point now where it's not novel anymore that we have to stay home. The things that we started might now not have the same ability to make us less stressful and happy. So we have to dig deeper at this point now. And Jess and I, she's in great shape, and she's writing, and but just have to stay vigilant and help her work out, where she feels not as stressed. So, I mean, that's kind of what my ongoing, lessons of what we're all going through now. I'm also lucky to have a little dog with me. If I didn't have Pip, I don't know what I'd do. He makes me laugh every day and gets me outside, and he's a joy and a great comfort.
Pets are the best. They're one of the highest forms of self-care, in my opinion, as well. So I know, Kevin, you were just talking about your dog as well.
Yeah, no, Vestry, my little Vizsla, she, like Glenn said, like a dog is so great because, I mean, the interaction and the companionship, but also my dog forces me to get outside and just set my feet in the grass or going outside and getting a breath of fresh air. To whereas it's so funny, I'm now going to use that forever. An introvert with polished extrovert skills. I write a lot of stuff down, so I just have a few notes here, but that is so me. And I would shut the door to outside or the garage and just be inside the whole day. But I'm thankful to have a pet that wants to be outside and to run around and to throw the ball to, because kind of seeing things in their entirety, a dog or a pet, is just great to have, especially in a time like this. So very thankful.
Yeah, and Kevin, can you share a little bit more about what self-care means to you right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wrote some stuff down here, so if I look down, forgive me. But a lot of it, I was actually trying to put myself in a headspace of where I was and kind of where my headspace was when I was in high school, and then also my self-care now. And these things are very personal to me, whether it be, anything physical or mental wellness or health related, body and mind. Community is something that I've been preaching a lot. I just did a video because I just read an article in the New York Times about what loneliness and this time of isolation can mean in the long term, and it being a social issue. So that was another thing that I'd like to talk about in terms of routine. And then Glenn mentioned it, like balance. I think we're all looking for balance in our life, and that's probably the toughest thing to achieve. But for me, during this time, just because we don't know what's coming the next day, we don't know what it's going to look like in a month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or what life is even going to look like coming out of this. I mean, how we're going to be able to communicate. Thankfully, in using our virtual experience or using our devices or being here on our computers, we're able to, have a sense of being in physical form and interacting in that way and being able to see everybody's face. So for me, it's been limiting screen time and social media. I think you can really, I do it too. I tend to fall into that trap where, I have my notifications, I'm watching, the president and everybody in power address the entire world, let alone the country. I'm scrolling through and seeing what people doing, just mindlessly scrolling my social platforms, but I've tried to separate myself from that, and whether it be the dog or whether it be with my girlfriend or getting a sweat in, as Glenn mentioned, because it does give me so much energy, and I need to do that for one of my core competencies, which is my job, being a basketball player. But just being mindful of what's going on around me and continuing to be active throughout this time. So these are all things, I'll keep going, but these are things I wish I had the presence of mind when I was younger to be able to tell myself or to know. Another huge thing, I'm a creature of habit. I'm a routine-based person. So when that was taken away from me, and the NBA was the first major sport to move and postpone their season, fingers crossed we will get back to playing. But I know it's annoying to feel like you're stuck at home and having not really any structure or trying to fill your days with things. But for me, routine is huge for my self-care, because I will get lost, and sometimes, having dealt with mental health issues my whole life, my mind almost feels like it can play tricks on me, and I can do everything I can to offset it. But if I don't have a routine and I don't feel like I'm working towards something and have that sense of accomplishment, I don't feel as good as I would have, both in my physical and mental. So I think that's huge for me too, which leads me into setting goals. And that's no matter how big, how micro, or how, or how small or how big, it doesn't matter. It can be something as small as making your bed in the morning. So at night you think, okay, I have this made bed that I can go back to, and I don't even have to stress about that little thing. But it can also be, something big, a hobby that you want to pick up, that coming out of this, you're going to be able to have and to show people, either in your leisure time or something that you want to work towards for the future. You just don't know what that's going to look like for yourself. So I think feeling that sense of accomplishment and progress, you'll find that the world tends to open up for you, which is, for me, super fun, because I tend to dip my toe in a lot of different spaces. Another thing is random acts of kindness. That's something that I've always been a giver at heart, but also I didn't realize how really it's been therapy for me, really, the last two and a half years, maybe 24 to 28-ish months, is just paying it forward, doing right by the next person, and that's allowed me to be more empathetic and really listen better. I mean, I think that's something that I've done, a lot better, and that's been a form of self-care for me. So whether it's, you're at home now, it's your brother, sister, mom, dad, who's ever in the house with you. It can be something as small as, cleaning the dishes for your mom and dad. Just sometimes I'll walk up to my girlfriend, Kate, and just give her a big hug. She'll say, what's that for? I'll just say, I don't know. Like, I just felt good. But like, for me, I lost my grandmother. I wasn't able to say goodbye to her in 2013. So just reaching out to people virtually, reaching out to people on these devices, as I mentioned, I think is extremely important in that sense of community I talk about. And I know this is long-winded, but I have this last one I want to share because I can't mention, or I can't not mention this one, and it's making up for missed opportunities. We don't know, and I can't even imagine, because I'm in my 12th year in the NBA, and we had our season, we had about a fourth of our season taken away, and we didn't know, we haven't had closure. We don't know if we will be able to finish it out, but I can't imagine having, because high school, it's set in stone that you're going to have 4 years of high school. At college, you're going to have, undergrad, you're going to have, 3 to 4 years, depending on how fast you finish. So having that taken away from you, I mean, it hurts me thinking about that from you guys, and having to, do so much from home, and the distractions that are there. And by the way, tip of the hats to the teachers, because they should have so much respect during this time. But, try and make up for those moments that you lost. So when you do come back, you're leaving, you almost feel like you're coming back on the same foot. And when we come out of this, while it will likely change the way that we communicate forever, try to find ways to stay connected, and we will get back on point. Human beings are extremely resilient. This is a common enemy, and nothing unites us like a common enemy. So just find ways to make up for this lost time, because time is, it's really our biggest commodity. It's not elastic. You can't stretch it by any means. So just take advantage of this time in any way that you can. And so that's my 5 little points of self-care that I could go on and on and on about, but those are ways that I'm trying to take advantage of it now.
That's wonderful. And like you said, this is a time to take advantage of maybe missed opportunity. This could be a missed opportunity if we're not taking advantage of things right now. But you and Glenn had a lot of overlapping things too, just movement and how that gives you actually gives you energy, and being outdoors. And I think taking a social media break is really important as well.
Jesse's joining us.
Oh, great.
This is my sister, Jess.
Hi, guys.
And I think for me, and I'm 72 years old. So you guys all know how to talk to each other on social media. I don't, but even with the amount of Instagram and things that I do, I have to really monitor myself to see if it's kind of taking over in a certain way. I'll post a thing, and I don't do it, terribly often, but then you find yourself checking back. How many people have come here? How many people? And you think, okay, you've got to take time to have your own thoughts, as important and as vital as connection is, and we are a tribal species. We need connection in order to survive. And I think that's one of the wonderful things that being able to do something like this with all of you, it's one of the great gifts of social media. But at the same time, I think I just, even, at my age, I feel when it's doing something to my mind and my body that is not positive. And at that point I say, okay, I need to take a bit of a rest from this. I need to look at the sky. I need to look at I I need to smell the air. I need to read a book. I need, you know, whatever it is. So I really, really think that Kevin's point is an incredibly good one.
Absolutely. And I think there's a fine balance too, because with technology, we're so grateful to be able to connect with each other. Because as you mentioned, Kevin, I watched your story the other day about that New York Times article, and I looked it up and read it and was like, man, just, you know, we're having physical distancing versus social isolation right now, and still being able to connect with people is so good, not only for your mental health, but how that can affect you physically as well over time, not having that social interaction. So we've had quite a few questions come through for both of you, and I'm so impressed, you guys. These are amazing questions. So we did have Grant raise his hand to ask a question. Grant, do you want to come off mute and ask Glenn and Kevin your question?
Yeah, definitely. Hi guys, I'm Grant. I go to Notre Dame High School in Los Angeles. And my question for you guys, it kind of has to do with what you, Kevin, were talking about at the end there. I'm a senior, much like many of the other kids here right now. And so this has been, I think, a tough time for us, just not only, you know, coping with being inside all day and doing your work online, but also with the loss of, you know, missed opportunities and, you know, our senior prom and our grad night and all these different things. And I think, you know, oftentimes, at least from what I've heard, people have been like, well, there's people that have it worse. And while that is very true, I mean, people have definitely have it worse than I do necessarily, but it's just, I think, you know, not just coping with an everyday thing, but also coping with a loss thing. And that could, like, not just be for seniors, it could also be for people that are coping with the loss of, you know, a family member because of coronavirus, and just all sorts of things. So I guess my question is kind of, how do you balance not only, you know, surviving day to day in the sense of, you know, with self-care, but also deal with, you know, the grief that comes with the loss of time and the loss of opportunity?
I think Jess, you might have I think we are actually in a, as a nation, we're grieving more than we might be aware of.
Yeah.
There are many things to grieve nowadays. And I think you recognizing that is probably the first biggest step, that it's a natural thing to feel. And there was an article, was it from Harvard or from the New York Times, about it? We're going through a time of national grief. And that is something to talk openly about if you can, I think. And Kevin, what do you think?
No, I just to piggyback off of what you just said. I think it absolutely is normal to feel this way. And I think continuing to have the conversation, I mean, Grant, I can't even imagine what it would be like to have missed talk about prom. You know, I played high school sports. I, you know, had a great graduation with my closest friends, you know, and I actually had to say goodbye to a lot of them just a few days after we graduated high school. So I can't even wrap my head around what it must be like to, you know, have to finish your schooling and not be around your friends and be able to reach out and touch them and interact with them in that way, and finish out your senior year. So I am sorry to hear that. I don't think that's lost on any of us right now. And I just think we have to continue to have these conversations, talk about it, because something that I always say and wish I could have told my younger self is that nothing haunts us like the things we don't say. Like, you try to live it out and openly and outwardly, because this is a time of grief. This is an extremely tough time, and you don't have to feel bad about feeling that way, because it's all relative. And like mental health and what I talk about and what we all talk about here is, it just doesn't discriminate. This this affects people in so many different ways. So I think just hearing the empathy and compassion and what you said too, like, yeah, sure, people do have it worse than us, but just the fact that you even consider them and realize that, kudos and tip of the hat to you. But I'm sorry that, man, a senior, I can't even imagine what that must be like. So, you know, like I said, just try and, you know, one thing I always say too is I don't have all the answers, but just try and make up for those. It's not even a lost opportunity, because I feel like it was just taken away from you and all of us this moment in time. But hopefully that we will come out of this changed and for the better. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is we come out of this unchanged, right? So
Yeah.
I know that doesn't directly answer your question, but I hope
Hasn't happened before.
no.
You know, I mean, 1918, they certainly didn't have phones and computers. So this is brand new. And I know for myself, I've been writing a lot and drawing a lot. And I've resorted to dot books and, you know, anything that keeps me from feeling the weight of this. Because I don't know about you, but I can't go 24 hours feeling down about this. It's just not productive. And it helps me remember that we've never been through this before. This is brand new. So if we're groping around in the dark, that's okay. You know?
That's such a good point, you know, because I feel like we've never been through something like this before, and it's okay to be in your feelings, but we just don't want to get stuck there as well. Yeah. You know, we've had a couple of really great questions come through. April Smith had a really great question. She asked, how do we as high schoolers and students help make a difference or larger impact when it comes to the narrative for mental health? Great question, April.
So I can speak to that because Youth Uprise was actually a big part and has been a big part of my story surrounding mental health, because I remember the few days prior to me, you know, outwardly expressing, you know, my story and my first public panic attack, which was a couple of years ago. But when I decided to you know, write my article and, you know, press send on it, I had gotten to, I was in Los Angeles for All-Star Weekend, and it was actually the day that I landed there and got to my hotel room and set up and was getting ready for the weekend, Parkland, Florida had happened. So I kind of, it registered to me, you know, it not only being, you know, an issue with, you know, what the, you know, the people that had died, the shooter, the families, you know, the country, as far as it being a social issue and gun control, you know, all of those things were not lost on me. And it just made me think of, like, you know, as in its entirety, where we are as a country. And that led me into, okay, I want to tell my own story, but also I think it's very, you know, where these numbers have trended, and we had talked about the, you know, loneliness as well, where it's trended in the wrong direction. I thought it was super important to just share my story and see the uprise in the youth and what those kids did after the fact, which was so important. And then in my home state of Portland, Oregon, where the second leading killer in ages 10 to 34 is suicide. And so kids, high schoolers, there was 5 of them that went to the state capitol, and actually, I think it was Utah was the other state, and several other states have it now, but there was kids anywhere from 15 to 18. 5 kids went to the state capitol and hard pressed everybody there, all the powers to then allow sick days every semester or quarter, not sick days, excuse me, mental health days. And I think it was 3 or 4 of them. And it just shows you that you know, at any age, it doesn't matter the demographic. You really can elicit change. You really can make change. Like dreams don't have deadlines, and don't, like, if somebody asks you to jump, ask how high. Like, there's no limit to what you can do, and don't let somebody tell you because of your age or socioeconomic status or where you're from, sexual preference, gender profile, whatever it is, don't let somebody tell you you can't do something, because we're in an age where thankfully that a lot of that, and hopefully it'll continue to go that way, will not matter anymore. So any of you, no matter how small, even during this time, whether it's a local food bank or you know, national with the CDC or World Health Organization, you guys can make a difference. That's what I'd say.
John?
Oh, I know.
Thank you so much. I just want to say that it's a pleasure being here. I mean, being in US as an exchange student is a pleasure, and let alone, I mean, being here in a group chat with Bring Change to Mind Club. So I have actually two questions, and the first one is kind of the most important one for me so far. So during the past couple of days, we have noticed some sort of polarization of the society, where we have a friend or a family member or someone we know or some sort of influential figure that is calling and advocating to seize this time and be as productive as we can and get those gains and start working out and read as many books as we can and all that stuff of being productive and growing, because in some sort of way we will never get this time again. But in the other side, we have groups of people that express their call for the opposite and express their resentment towards this advocation of being productive and striving for progress in times where we should focus on taking things easy as we can and maybe chilling out, to put it in some way. So I would like to know, what is your point of view in this matter, and what do you think what should we do as youngsters in this time when we have these two frontiers? And my second question is, what are you getting of this quarantine? Are you the group of people that are taking it easy and catching up with the Netflix movies, or are you the ones that have been working out and reading as much as they can, or as you can? Or that's my question.
Does that go to the whole, just the two of us, or?
Well, I would like to hear you, Glenn, and your sister, and Kevin for sure, because of the age difference. I want to see how that also will impact your position in this sort of controversy.
Well, we take walks every day, and we have dogs, which are helpful.
Talked about our dogs.
Yeah, we have our dogs. And we have each other. I was isolated for 2 weeks because I had a possible,
Exposure, yeah.
Yeah, possible exposure, but I'm fine, thank God. But it was lonely without having my sister, being able to be here with my sister. So, but there's letters you can write. I've actually been really writing real letters and putting on stamps, which is good. And I don't know, I get very, very frustrated with the internet because I'm 66 and I didn't grow up with it. So it's still something that I don't particularly understand. I don't navigate very easily. So I try and stay off the internet as much as I can. Just everything, I'm trying to stay calm, and calm comes with exercise and reading and not
Turning off the news.
turning off the news, turning off the Netflix. That's hard because we all love to watch movies, but playing music instead.
Yeah, music is great.
Music is good.
I don't know a lot about the great old movies that are considered, you know, Hollywood classics, and it's a great time to explore that and get your opinion about movies before you were born, because there's some great movies out there. I just want to say something that occurred when Kevin was talking, and you're talking about what effect can you have. I think one thing that this is teaching us as a nation is how important our leadership is, and how we have to hold them accountable as much as possible. And I really, what Kevin said about kids going to the state capitol and demanding things, you have to do that.
Mhm.
That has to be part of what you guys do. Because we have to, we just heard that Cuomo cut some money in trying to get the budget to balance, cut money out of Medicaid. And that's for
Not Cuomo, Trump.
No, it was Cuomo.
Oh.
Sorry, it was Cuomo, which was,
Oh
sorry to
my
say
God.
it, sorry to say it, but it
Yeah.
still is an issue that people do not, they say, oh, we can let that go, you know, and that can change if you guys go to your state houses. You know, I've talked about this with Pamela a lot. There should be bring change to mind delegations going to Washington.
Yeah.
You know, because we now see the faces of all those people who are making our decisions, and some of them are making decisions that are giving us grief. And I'm not just talking, you know, politically. I'm talking emotionally and psychologically.
Yeah.
And I think that you have great power because you're the generation that's coming up. We're the ones who fucked everything up. You're the ones. You are gonna, you know, you're gonna save the world for your kids and your grandkids, and I really say that absolutely seriously. So you have a tremendous amount of power, because not very many people actually do that, and when you do that, it makes a big impression.
Glenn, I think you made such a good point, because I know just working in our schools, to have a group of kids go and talk to their administration, they're going to listen to them and take what they say into account when there's a big group of them, and they're listening to what their needs are, for sure. You're absolutely right. I want to be respectful.
Your homework, you know, you got to really be
Yes.
very, very specific in what you're asking.
Right. Well, if my eldest son is schizophrenic, Kalen, he was on a lot of our PSAs. And if Medicaid is cut, there goes his health insurance. I mean, this is insane.
Yeah.
Now, I want to be respectful of your time. I want to be respectful of your time, Glenn and Kevin. Are we doing okay on time? I know you might have needed to go at some point, so I want to make sure we're being respectful of your time.
Okay.
We're good.
Yeah,
Good.
sure.
Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, because we were just chatting. We're like, well, maybe we'll just throw the agenda out, because we're getting so many wonderful questions from these students. We thought we would just continue with a couple more questions, if that's okay with you both.
Throw out the agenda.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful. You know, a question that keeps coming up, let me find it here. There's so many, you guys. I'm so impressed. Let me go back up here. So Aubrey Reese asked, Aubrey, do you want to come off mute and ask this question, or do you want me to read it? I'll give you a couple seconds.
I'm trying to find my question again in the chat. There's a lot of questions.
I'll read it to you. You asked, while being stuck at home, how do you integrate a routine and structuring into your day that helps you feel accomplished? So you can kind of add to that if you want.
Yeah, so I know Glenn and Kevin, that you mentioned routine can be very important, and routine during this time is difficult to stick to. So I was just wondering if you have any tips on how to stick to a routine and what personally works for you in quarantine. Yeah.
So I'm pretty old school. I don't take many of my notes I mean, I do have my notes in my phone and those accumulate over time, but I write everything down. I have like notebooks full, and if I don't know it, I know where to find it. So when I make my routine, I'm just such a checklist person, and that as I mentioned earlier, I'm such a creature of habit, and nothing makes me happier than just like crossing something off. And it could be the easy, like taking the trash out in the morning. I'm just gonna cross it off. But one thing I'll tell you what I've added, which is funny to my routine, is it's probably, what do they say? Old habits die hard. Like I always wake up and like grab my phone and I'm like this for 10 minutes. Like even if I do or don't press snooze, I used to hop out of bed, get my coffee, start my routine, have my breakfast, boom, go and work out. Like I shower, have all my, workout or basketball stuff laid out, and then I'd be off on my day. But now I've found it as part of my habit. It's easy to do during this time because you're always at home and say, I can start my day whenever. But being punctual and on time is typically the best and purest form of respect. And doing that for yourself as well, like keeping on the schedule and trying to keep on time while giving yourself a little bit of leeway, for me has been really, really important. And I like to be productive. Like I said, I like to check things off. I like to feel that sense of accomplishment. So that's pretty personal to me and my routine as well. But making sure that I'm doing right by my body and my mind, and kind of scanning through and seeing what's going to be best for me throughout the day.
I tended to look at my phone when you wake up, and I've decided to only look to see what the weather's going to be like. I've decided to make my bed before I go downstairs. And I've also decided to clean up. Usually there's a lot of life is in the kitchen. To clean up the kitchen, no matter how late it is, to have it clean and in order, so that when you come down the next morning, you're not burdened by what you didn't do the day before. That little tiny thing has really helped me think, I have a nice new clean day I can go into. And I'm learning to add rather than start, because I'm a little bit opposite than Kevin. I find it hard to stay to a schedule, but I'm slowly adding things to my schedule that I think I can actually do every day. And I think if I just look at the weather, if I make my bed, if I go down to a clean kitchen, those three things will have tended to start me off really well. And then I'll have, whether it's I want to spend time on my computer, checking in with friends to see if they're okay. If I have some work that I have to have a deadline for, I always try to, get outside. But I think one of these things that this time is teaching me is how to build my schedule realistically. If you're not somebody who easily can stay on a routine.
Those
And
are
I
some
do like the checklist idea.
Oh, I know. I love checking things off the list. It's very gratifying for sure. And Glenn, you kind of took the words right out of my mouth. The next question was, I was going to pick, was from Juan Serran. Juan, do you want to come off mute and ask the question, or do you want me to ask it for you? I'll give you a couple seconds. Juan asked, what is the one thing that the quarantine has taught you?
Germs travel.
Wash your hands.
Yeah.
I think it's teaching me who comes into your head that you haven't thought of for a while, that you really care to find out whether they're okay. And I'm realizing that there are more people like that in my life than I thought. And I've made the decision that when somebody comes into my head, I will go to my computer and I'll say, hi, how are you? How you doing? sending love. And I think for me, what I'm learning is that I do have a community of friends that I haven't always been attentive to, because frankly, you don't have time all the time to spend, but you can say, I'm thinking about you and I'm sending love and I hope you're okay. So I think it's teaching me the network of friends that I do care about, whether, even if they're not friends that I saw regularly or I see regularly.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I mean, I'm not always, I think it's my introverted nature that sometimes phone calls and texts, I can feel a little bit overwhelmed to try and feel like I need to get back to everybody or feel the need to have to, text them back. So therefore, I'll get so worked up and then, it'll go 24 hours will go by the next day. And then I'll get so worked up that it'll stay there. So I've tried to do a better job at that, as well as, exactly, Glenn. I mean, you nailed it. Like, reach out to people that either, I hadn't seen in a while, hadn't chatted with in a while, but at the end of the day, they really do mean something to me. And it's it helps me kind of broaden and open up my world in a very meaningful way, because you're not going to look back. And Glenn, I imagine you wouldn't either, is look back and say, oh God, I wish I would. And, you've had the most unbelievable career in life, but you wouldn't look back and say, I wish I would have had more fame. I wish I would have had more money. It's probably, you're so thankful for those relationships that you have in your life, because they make your life full. And then one last thing that I'll add is what this time has done. And I think everyone, if you recognize and see what's going on or hear what's going on, the light in this, and the bright light in this, and our heroes are those people that, are the nurses and the doctors and the first responders. And I mentioned the school teachers and pharmacy workers, grocery store workers, people that are doing the deliveries, so we're able to have some semblance of a normal life at home, et cetera, so on and so forth. But I think, at least for me, sometimes life moves at you so fast. And Glenn mentioned, that your time shrinks, especially when, you're out of something like a quarantine and you're not able to really take a step back or remove yourself and see it from, 10,000 feet and say, wow, these people are really what keep us all together and keep the world together. So I think those people are extremely important. And that's something that I've really, really learned during this time.
That's amazing. Well, with that in mind, I think we could stay on for a lot longer and answer all of these questions. But like I said, I do want to be respectful of everyone's times. Obviously, connection is so important to everyone right now. And just seeing the stream of questions coming in from these students and wanting to learn from you both, being such big mental health advocates, I know I can speak on their behalf that they appreciate you taking the time for sharing your hearts with everyone tonight, because, connection right now is everything. So thank you so much for taking the time. And I know we wanted to take a picture with everyone. Brenna, can you take a screenshot of everyone and count us down so we all are smiling at the right time?
Sure can. I'll do this a few times because I have many screens of faces here. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. You can be silly if you want. That's okay. Okay, next page. 3, 2, 1. I know nobody knows what page they're on, so I'm sorry. Okay, third page, 3, 2, 1. And last page, 3, 2, 1. Thanks for humoring us, guys.
Can I say something? If you guys can triage the questions that weren't answered, I would be very happy to answer a chunk of them. I don't know if Kevin would as well, but I don't want you to go away from this feeling that you didn't get an answer for something you were seeking. Not that we might not have the answer, but
yeah.
Sure. Yeah, we just asked if we're working on figuring out how to save all of these questions, be able to still get them to you and answer in some other format. Because like I said, we were just so overwhelmed with how fast it's filled up with all these questions. A lot of them are kind of overlap, but I think what we've covered tonight is a really great starting point. And like I said, we'll hang on to these questions and figure out another format where you guys are able to answer these a little bit more for the kids, whether it be social media or an email or whatnot. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, wonderful. Well, just to wrap up, I'm going to share my screen with you. Today on our social media accounts, we shared our new campaign coming out called No Normal. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Give me a thumbs up. Wonderful. So obviously right now it's very good timing because there is no normal right now anymore. So we'll be having a new PSA coming out on Monday that we are really going to want to rely on you guys to help share and get the word out as far as what no normal means. And you know, what you guys are doing with your clubs is so impactful, and we're so grateful for all of you. Like we talked about, we wanted to give you a way to start crafting your own self-care routine. And I know we weren't able to do that within our groups tonight, but we have a special gift that we'll be sharing on our Instagram account. It's a self-care checklist that we'll be posting here afterwards that you guys can use. If you've been following along on BC2M High School, and if you aren't, go ahead and give us a follow. We are posting our club member quarantine tips throughout every week. About twice a week we'll have a new one posted tomorrow. If you guys are interested in submitting a video as far as what you're doing the quarantine, feel free to email your regional manager or your club advisor and we'll get that posted so you can help inspire everybody. But keep meeting virtually. Kevin and Glenn and Jesse, thank you so very much. We are so grateful for your time and for your perspective on self-care tonight. It's definitely way different now with the quarantine, but I think there's a lot of great takeaways that the kids will be able to take with them tonight.
Thank you, Kevin. It was lovely to meet you. And
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Glenn. You guys were awesome. Nice to virtually meet you. Sorry we didn't get around to all the questions, but blame me because I talk a lot. So.
Hey, that's okay. Obviously, like I said, they wanted the connection. So everyone, you can come off mute, tell us bye. Make sure you tune into your emails and social media. We'll have another national call next week for everyone.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
I love the jersey.
Hi.
Thank you so much.
These are so cute.
Goodbye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Pictures.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Power.